Three friends boarded Disney's Galactic Starcruiser to seek their destiny and emerged as heroes of the Halcyon. Welcome to Heroes of the Halcyon, the best and perhaps only Galactic Starcruiser superfan podcast that I know of. I am Galactic Starcruiser superfan Drew, and joining me are...
Galactic Starcruiser superfan Martin.
And Galactic Starcruiser superfan Kristine.
Excellent. Thank you, Martin and Kristine, for joining me on this auspicious debut of our podcast.
Woohoo!
We're recording this podcast for a variety of reasons, but on today's episode, what we want to do is we want to introduce ourselves to you, maybe show you, tell you a little bit about what we brought to the Galactic Starcruiser experience, maybe some of our background on Star Wars, generally let you guys get to know us. And to start off, Martin, I'm going to start with you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'd say I'm definitely a Star Wars super fan. I mean, I was 5.5 when Star Wars first came out in 1977, and it rocked that little kid's world. The best day of my entire childhood was my dad taking me to see Empire Strikes Back opening day at the Egyptian Theater in Hollywood. Absolutely stellar experiences. I'm primarily a toy collector. I've been collecting Star Wars toys since day one. Several decades later, we have the entire house is filled with toys.
Yeah. Podcast listeners, you can't see it, but we literally are surrounded by what can only be described as a pop culture museum of not just Star Wars, but everything else you can possibly imagine.
It is known to all of our friends as the Smithsonian.
Excellent. Nicely. Well played. I like that.
A play on our last name, Martin and Kristine Smith.
Well, Kristine, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I am a late bloomer into nerddom. Didn't really happen until I was in my early 20s and met the Mister. Have a variety of different things that I'm into. I'm a huge Funko collector. But because Martin is such a huge Star Wars fan, I'm along for that ride. If he's a 10, I'm probably a 7 on that scale. During COVID, we were able to watch every single episode of Clone Wars, which I had never done before.
And Rebels.
Nice.
And I am a huge fan of both of those. And then, of course, everything that's come out on Disney+. So whenever we started talking about Galactic Starcruiser, between that and our love of Disney, I was on board from the start.
Awesome. I can't say that I'm a huge Star Wars fan. I definitely love it. Like Martin, I was there. It was an opening day at the Egyptian. For me, it was the Fiesta 6 in Mesa, Arizona.
Yes.
But my dad took my sister and I out of school. We went to go see it, and it was a delightful experience. I certainly played more than my fair share of pew pew on the playground back in the day. Star Wars was absolutely kind of a bedrock experience for me as a moviegoer. On that same 10-point scale, if Martin's a 10, I'm probably a 6 or 7 as well.
I gotta tell you, I actually think that's something amazing about Starcruiser is you don't need to be a Star Wars super fan to get an absolutely amazing experience out of it.
Right.
You just have to like having fun, having games. I mean, so knowledge of Star Wars is useful, but you don't need to be a Star Wars superfan.
What did you, besides, was it just Star Wars that you brought to the Galactic Starcruiser experience, Martin, or was there more than that?
Really, I thought the big fun here was creating a character. I actually played an existing character from Star Wars history, and everyone else was original characters, but we spent months putting together our characters in really intricate detail and backstories, and bringing ourselves and inserting ourselves right into that Star Wars adventure was something that there's no other place on Earth you get to do that except Galactic Starcruiser.
Kristine, how about you? What did you bring? What kind of things were you bringing in or hoping for before we went on Galactic Starcruiser?
Realistically, the main thing that I brought in was angst and fear. I had never done any kind of cosplay before. I had never done any kind of role-playing before. And so to me, I was very concerned and apprehensive about how am I going to do this? And am I going to have fun or am I going to ruin their fun? Until we stepped on board, I was very nervous about what that journey was going to be for me. And in the end, it ended up being life-changing. We could not rebook a trip fast enough. I think it was about 2 weeks.
It was almost to the day. 2 weeks later, we had basically signed up for our second voyage in October. So pretty excited. For me, I have to say, we watched the DFB guide, Disney Food Blog, good old AJ, had a preview video that we watched the week before we went. I think it was the week before.
Mm-hmm.
And in that video, she said, who is this experience for? You have to like escape rooms. It'd be great if you're a Star Wars fan, but that's not super important. And you have to be ready to interact and play. So that's what I brought in. I was looking forward to this primarily as an exercise in just seeing if they could pull the story off. In the early days when they at first announced Galactic Starcruiser, I would love the movie Westworld when I was a kid, and immediately I thought, oh my gosh, this is going to be Westworld, but it's Star Wars.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. So what I was bringing into was a hope that the vision in my head of what this experience could be was going to come true, and definitely did for me. Well, cool. Well, Martin and Kristine, both you guys. I'll start with you, Kristine. What is your goal for this podcast?
For me, I think it's important to kind of go back to what we were just talking about, is to make sure that people understand that you don't have to be a super fan for this. You don't have to be a cosplayer. You don't have to be somebody who role plays. You can just be someone who wants to go and have a good time. I would like to do something to help others alleviate the fear that I had before we went, and kind of break down a little bit of that apprehension before you get on board. It is an epic experience that unfortunately we can't do a great job of relaying because it's one of those, you have to do it to really understand it, but would like to help eliminate somebody else's apprehension of signing up to get on board.
Martin, how about you?
I just love talking about Starcruiser with my friends. I mean, and just people I meet. Anyone you talk to that's been on Starcruiser weeks after they've gotten off, months after they've gotten off now, they can't stop talking about it. I mean, we've all been to really great, far exotic places around the world, done real life adventures, and we keep talking about Starcruiser. It's something that's just a unique experience in the world, and I just love talking with people, to people about it. I love thinking about where they can go with this, incredible canvas that they've got to play with, all the story possibilities. I love talking about the technology behind it. But most of all, I just love talking with Starcruiser with my friends.
Sure. Well, I remember we all got together several times, if I haven't mentioned it already, before our trip. We booked in October of 2021, and our voyage was originally going to be in June. An earlier date opened up, so we hopped on board. So we were lucky enough to go in March.
Voyage 6.
Voyage 6, yeah. So we were pretty excited to go when we went. And before we went on that trip, we had, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, I don't know how many breakfast meetings where we would talk about the trip, what we were looking forward to, characters we were going to do, what our experiences were going to be like. That's what I want to bring to this podcast. Not just talking about it like you were saying, Martin, but I want to share with anybody who's thinking about going. Here are some things you can look forward to. To your point, Kristine, I love helping people be a little less anxious about it. I'd love to help anybody who's possibly going to go on to have the best time, and maybe hear about it from other people like ourselves who have gone and can share some of our experiences with you guys. I also would love to dig into more. Martin mentioned the technology, but man, I would love to dig into a dream would be to talk to some people who actually worked on this experience.
Right.
And what did they have? I'd love to talk to people who other people who've gone. I'd love to talk to people who maybe want to go and what are their questions. And I'm super excited to talk about it more.
Just from an operational standpoint, how do they make it work from day to day?
Yeah,
it's just a
absolutely.
fascinating deep dive into this incredible experience.
So what kind of episode topics, Martin? Give me a couple of episode topics that you'd like to see us do in the next few weeks.
I got to say that the first one for me is why you do want to create a character. You don't need to, but there's certain advantages to doing it. And I'd like to kind of talk about what you can get from the experience, kind of slingshot yourself in some of these, if you do have a well-defined character.
Kristine, how about you?
I would say we really need to dig into costumes, how easy they can be. Again, if you've never cosplayed before, how it enhances your experience.
For me, so episode topics I'd love to do. I'd love to talk tips and tricks. One of the first things I did, because again my brain was buzzing with all things Galactic Starcruiser when I came back, I'd love to talk tips and tricks. I wrote 16 tips on Reddit that covered, here's some things I wish I'd known. All spoiler free, so I'd love to talk about some of those things. Martin and I talked about it earlier. I'd love to dig into the technology from what we know. We're just a bunch of dummies, so we don't know anything, but we know enough to read about Bluetooth low emission or Bluetooth beacons or the magic bands and the RFID technology. So I'd love to dig into that and just speculate about how they're pulling some of this stuff off.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, cool. With that, let me ask you guys out there in podcast land, what sort of topics do you want to see us cover? If you had your choice to actually reach out and touch us, if you had an ability to say what kind of topics, we'd love to hear from you guys. Kristine, how can people email us ideas for future shows?
You can find us at heroesofthehalcyon@gmail.com.
And do we have other social media outlets as well?
We do. Look forward to pictures from our trip and some additional information on Instagram and Twitter at heroesofthehalcyon.com.
Wow, that was actually available?
Surprisingly,
Wow, that's
it
amazing.
was. That's good. And with that, how do we end our episodes here, Martin?
Well, as they say on the Halcyon, it's our honor. So until next episode, I'm Galactic Starcruiser Superfan Martin.
Galactic Starcruiser Superfan Kristine.
And Galactic Starcruiser Superfan Drew.
We look forward to shooting the poodoo with you next time. Raise your glasses, everyone. Tabuite!